Hello again. Well, back with another video for Ginger GM. This time I'm going to look at my last round game for the European Club Cup. This is a game I had against a team, I think, from Bosnia. Opponent's name was Ermeni, and he was about 2300 player. The reason this game was interesting was mainly because of an interesting idea, which I've looked at quite a long time ago, against the Bishop B5 check Sicilian. Now, the Bishop B5 check Sicilian is quite often the bane of a number of Sicilian players, because it's a very passive way. Well, I say passive, but it's got a very boring reputation, this move. And when black aims to play the Sicilian, black often doesn't want to go into this kind of boring, typical position that might arise after something like Bishop D7, Bishop takes Bishop, Queen takes Bishop, C4. This is the kind of thing that, you know, black doesn't really want to do when he's playing Sicilian. So the question has always been, after this Bishop D5 check, how can black make things more interesting and aggressive and attacking? Now, I think the way I played this is a very good choice and can lead to some very interesting positions. The funny thing was, I actually prepared this line, this move G5, which is going to come up, for a game I had against Mickey Adams in an important round of the British Championships of the black pieces. The most ridiculous thing about this, I spent a long time in the morning preparing this move, but when I got to the board I was obviously quite nervous, and instead of playing the move G5, my hand drifted somewhere else and I played a completely different move, and I lost the game after Mickey played very well. But I think G5 would have been a great choice against Mickey, who's obviously extremely good player, but my only chance probably to beat him would have been to mix the position up early. Anyway, let's go into the line. So knight to c6 was played. Now bishop takes c6 is becoming quite popular of late. I think black should be fine here, but it's you have to know what you're doing. Most players do castle, and now bishop to d7 stops this idea of taking on c6. This is all very typical stuff. Knight f6, rook e1, and now a6. Now, white has a choice here to go bishop a4 or bishop f1. Now, it's a similar idea against bishop a4. Against bishop a4, you can continue b5, bishop c2, e5. And now, after h3, again, you can play g5 in this position. So, we'll come to the game and we'll see how this goes in the game. So, bishop to f1. So, again, e5. I think against Mickey now I played something like bishop to g4. I have no idea why. But e5 is a much more interesting move. Now, white generally plays h3 here. The point is, if white plays a natural d4, which he often wants to play, then this is still playable. But I think black's doing perfectly okay after c takes, and now bishop g4. This is why white plays h3 to stop this bishop g4 move. Because now after a move, an obvious move like d5, knight d4, becomes very annoying for white, and black must be doing absolutely fine in this position, if not more than that. So h3 is now the standard response to e5, and now this interesting idea g5. I think the first person to come up with this idea was Bob Eames, actually. I've maybe had this 5 times now, with I think 5 out of 5 for black, so it's looking good. Now, I've put some analysis in the PGN file attached to this game, so you can have a look at white's other options, which mainly involves d4. My opponent decided to take this though, and now rook to g8 is my main idea. And often, as in the game, I'll sacrifice a pawn, but I get a big attack against white's king. So already, white's idea of getting this very sensible opening with no risk, he's already put in a bit of a dilemma, because he's going to have to play a sharp tactical game where his king's going to be under attack. Now, I'm sure d4 is the best move here. And after this move, we can, well, it's probably better than move before, but okay, d4 is still an option here. My opponent played h4, trying to hold on to the pawn. h6, knight to h3, and we can now see that his h-pawn is not on h3 anymore, so I no longer have bishop takes h3. I had a long think here, there's a number of options, but I like the idea of knight to h5. And my simple plan here is to try to plonk this knight on f4, bring my queen to f6, and castle queenside. So, very sensible. d3, now queen to f6. All my pieces starting to come a bit nearer to his king. Bishop to e3, bishop to e7. I thought this was a useful move because I just want to castle queenside and bring my other rook over to the g file, so I need to get his bishop out of the way. I was very happy with my position here. Knight on b to d7, and now castles. This all looks very sensible. King to h2. Okay, now here maybe I played a slight inaccuracy. I just saw the plan I played in the game of tripling my pieces on the g file, and it looked very strong. But in actual fact, it's a bit unclear. I think a much better response here from me would have been queen to g6. I don't need to triple my pieces. I can just put my queen here, and I can now have ideas of moves like f5 coming up, and also there's always some danger on the g file. So I think after this move I've been doing extremely well. But rook g7 was very interesting. Now my opponent played b4. He's trying to get his counter-attack going. At the time I thought this would be too passive. Let's just take a stock of the opening here anyway. I think it's quite clear to see that even at this point, I can be very happy with the way things have gone. Like I said, when your opponent plays, if we go back to the opening, bishop b5 check earlier on, he wants to play a boring game with no tactics. So we can see now the position after rook g7 b4, he's completely placed outside his comfort zone. He's now going to be attacked. It's a very messy position, very tactical, just what you want to play when you're going to, playing this sit-in. So very interesting idea, this g5 move in the opening. This g5 idea against h3. So the basic thing to remember in this is when you get the standard position after a6, no matter where they put their bishop, your idea at some point is to go e5, and if they play the standard h3, to hit out with g5. Now it's important to play g5 only when they played h3, because then this pawn on h3 becomes a target after some rook g8 and bishop takes h3 move. g5 loses a lot of its power if the pawn's still on h2, so it doesn't make a lot of sense then. Okay, back to the game. So my opponent played here. I can see my plan, rook dg8. My opponent took here, and now knight c4. Now, one of his ideas is to go check and then knight d5, so I just went king c7. My opponent played d4, and here he was very short in time, so just showing how uncomfortable he was with this opening. He only had maybe 2-3 minutes left. Now, a much more sensible idea here would have been to capture on d4 a couple of times, but instead I saw a very attractive variation. It's not necessarily clear whether it's the best variation, but it's an attractive line, and I played rook g4, d5, queen g6 very quickly. Now, the point is that if he does something like pawn takes c6, then I can just continue rook takes g2 check. Now he can't take that because the queen takes g2 mate. If he goes king h1, I go rook g1 check. He can't take that again because of the mate, so the king has to come back. And now queen to g2 check. And eventually, after bishop takes queen, we go rook takes queen, and that is checkmate. So this is one of the lines that attracted me to this position. And, this is a very interesting position. Again, I don't think you can get away with stuff like g6 here because I have so many tempting moves here. I have basically 3 candidate moves to think of here. Knight takes g3 is one, rook takes g3 is another, and bishop takes h4 is another move. And all these are very dangerous, and I'm sure one of these moves is winning for me. Instead, my opponent should have played bishop to g5. Had he played this move, it's actually very unclear. And this move I suddenly saw in the game, and I was a bit concerned about it. And maybe White's actually doing okay, surprisingly, because I don't think he should be from the way the opening has gone. But this was his way to stay in the game. Instead, he played d6 check. And now, after king to b8, I think he's probably completely lost here. Again, if he takes on e7, we see the same plan as before, but it's queen to g2 mate coming up. So he can't do that. What else can he play? g3, I was actually planning here, because now my e7 bishop is on pre to take on h4. The point being, if you play something like rook knight takes, I go rook takes h4, pawn takes, and now queen g1 is mate. So that would have been very strong if g3, just bishop takes h4. If pawn takes, again, we had the same mate as before, rook g2, etc. So my opponent now played bishop g5, but this is too little too late, because I just played bishop takes g5, h takes g5. He has to try to keep the g file closed, otherwise he's in trouble. knight to f4, good square for the knight, g3, and now h takes g5. And we can see now, instead of the g file, my pieces are just going to transfer over to the h file, and it's the end of the game. Very nasty position for him. The game finished here, so queen h5 check, here come my pieces, king g1, rook to h8. Now, it's clear he can't take this knight here because of queen to h1 is mate. So my threat here is just queen to h2 check and queen takes g2 mate. So he tried his last move, knight to h4. But after queen takes h4, my opponent now resigned. The point being, if he goes pawn takes queen, I'll just go rook takes bishop check, king here, and now rook takes h4. And there's nothing my opponent can do here to stop rook to h1 checkmate, finishing the game. So I was quite happy with that game. This g5 idea I think is very interesting for you guys out there who play the Sicilian and you want to find an interesting way of meeting bishop to b5 check, because after knight c6, bishop d7, this is pretty much the main line position here. And the point being now, in the game you went bishop f1, where I go e5, h3, g5. But even if they go bishop a4, you can do the same idea. You just push that bishop away and you have the same idea here, very similar to the game. So a very interesting way of meeting the bishop b5 check Sicilian. I'm sure it becoming useful for a lot of players out there who are quite bored of facing this move. So please leave comments on my website and I will keep posting games if we get enough comments. Okay, thanks for now and I will see you guys soon.